exhibiting some serious interest in increasing services to this particular market. We hope to further generate growth. Negotiating talks between the Australian government and the Philippine government is scheduled sometime the second half of this year. These talks are bogged down with respect to fifth freedom rights, but we hope to force the issue within this year. Next, please. Okay. Of special interest to us is domestic travel. The statistics here emanates from what we call the Household Survey on Domestic Travelers conducted by the National Statistics Office every year. Okay, for last year, 2012, some 40.7 million Filipinos traveled within our archipelago. More than half of that, mind you, are what we call day tourists, okay? And less than half indulged on overnight travel. However, it still is very, very substantial because each Filipino that travels spend an average of 4,000 pesos. Okay? The average length of stay is 3.5 nights. 25% of that 4,000 pesos is spent on pasalubong or shopping, which fuels our retail industry. The most popular destinations with respect to Filipinos traveling is Metro Manila. The biggest magnet, obviously, are those humongous shopping malls. Second is Boracay, and third would be the beaches of Cebu City. Okay. We have simply revised our targets with NSCB in terms of our projections, and we will end the National Tourism Development Plan year 2016 with some 56 million Filipinos traveling around. Next, please. Okay, here's the opportunity. In terms of room capacities, in 2012, through a survey conducted by our regional offices and local government units, we have an inventory of some 162,700 rooms all over the country. Less than half of that are in the 3, 4, and 5-star category. 16 or 15,000 rooms are in the pipeline and will be operational by the year 2014. Out of that 15,000 rooms, 6,400 are being constructed in our international gateway city, Metro Manila. So practically 1/3 of those rooms are to be built here in Metro Manila. Next, please. We have identified the room gap of some 37,000 rooms all over various categories. This is juxtaposed because of what we have mentioned, the target of 10 million overseas visitors and some 20 million Filipinos traveling. Okay. The issue now confronting this tourism industry is our close consultations with the Board of Investments. BOI intends to come up with a moratorium on the incentive package being given to hotel and resort developers, particularly in the cities of Metro Manila, Cebu, Mactan, and Boracay. We have appealed to BOI that they shelve that particular move at least until 2015, when we are able to generate more rooms, particularly in the countryside. More of this by or after the elections. Okay, in terms of air seats, which provides us accessibility and connectivity to our major markets. Please take note of Korea. Last year, we successfully negotiated the increase of weekly seats from 19,500 to 28,000, which exists right now, currently being enjoyed by both Philippine carriers and Korean carriers. The utilization rate right now for the Philippines is 79%, with Korean carriers posting a 90% increase with respect to the seats. So if we are to be able to succeed in our projected arrivals coming from Korea of some 1.2 million by the end of this year, we again have to sit down in the bargaining table and be able to successfully increase the existing 28,000 seats to something like 35 per week. Of interest also, if you will see, seat utilization from the Philippine side vis-a-vis the foreign side, particularly in the markets of India, Indonesia, Hong Kong, okay, and Taiwan. There are still gaps, particularly in the Indonesia side, and that is the reason why we have pinpointed doubling our efforts in the Indonesian market. It's an archipelago consisting of more than 200 million Indonesians. The standards of living have substantially increased, but last year only 38,000 Indonesians visited the country. So we will be redoubling our efforts when in fact we have already established an office, a satellite office in Jakarta. AirAsia and Garuda is coming to our offices first week of March, and some informal discussions will be undertaken to be able to look forward to establishing direct flights between these countries utilizing Garuda as the air carrier. Next, please. On airports, considering the fact that our premier airport, Naya, is operating at a 130% above capacity, and that we believe the opening of Terminal 3 could be delayed to next year, early next year. The strategy obviously is to utilize secondary gateways. So you've seen the newspapers this past months with DOTC practically bidding out expansion contracts of some selected airports. But of immediate concern to us in the tourism industry, aside from obviously improving our secondary gateways, is the provision of customs, immigration, and quarantine services. Let me share you a side story about what happened sometime January this year. We successfully concluded talks with a charter operator in Seoul, and we agreed that 9 charter flights initially are to emanate from Seoul and land directly in Bacolod Silay International Airport. These 9 charter flights are fully loaded with golfers, mind you. They're just here, or they just want to go to Bacolod to play golf and stay 3 nights. We pleaded with the customs and immigration people. Customs responded. Immigration said they do not have the capability to set up immigration services in Bacolod. The charter operator, together with Zest Air, volunteered to pay for the per dimes and the transport cost of bringing these immigration people to Bacolod. No dice. But since the contracts already have been signed, we had to fly them in. We flew them in via Cebu Mactan International Airport for these golfers to be processed, and then at the dead of the night, flew to Bacolod. The operator had to pay, obviously, 2 times landing fees as well as the additional fuel. He lost money. However, he has serious intentions of doing it again sometime July, August. The piece of good news here is that because of this particular bottleneck, Executive Secretary Almendez's office issued a directive to selected government agencies to establish processing centers consisting of customs, immigration, and quarantine services in 7 airports as soon as possible. These are the airports of Puerto Princesa, Langendingan, Bacolod, Iloilo, Tagbilaran, Tacloban, and Legazpi. In response to this, the Bureau of Immigration submitted an urgent request to the Department of Budget and Management. Please release 198 million pesos to us. The plan is to be able to recruit and train 500 additional immigration people as soon as possible. As to when this will happen, we are in a praying mode, at least in the Department of Tourism. So, we continue to expound the use of our secondary gateways. Obviously, Clark International Airport is in the forefront. Our office in Shanghai and are in discussion talks to choose with charter operators in Chengdu, Sichuan province. So something positive might come out with that after the elections, to fly Chengdu Clark directly. Next, please. Okay, 33 new airplanes are to be delivered to our Philippine carriers starting this month to March 2014. That is broken down into 14 Airbus 320s, okay, 7 321s, care of Philippine Airlines, 10 Airbus 330s, which will be fielded to the Middle East, Australia, Japan, Korea, and 2 Boeing 777s, each of which has a capacity to accommodate 350 passengers. So, the issue now confronting us is as to when will we be able to regain the Category 1 status. As most of you, if you have read the newspapers recently, the ICAO team is right now in Manila conducting another round of evaluations and will be leaving us sometime February 28. Even us in the tourism department know exactly or don't even have an educated guess as to what our chances are. But obviously, these are deliveries already of airplanes. Most of the routes that will be flown in will be in ASEAN, in mainland China, like what we have mentioned, the Middle East, primarily United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and Australia, with Philippine Airlines leading the pack of introducing services hopefully to Darwin and to Brisbane. As to marketing, our implementing arm, the Tourism Promotions Board, should be fully operational sometime June with hopefully a bigger kitty, with PAGCOR sharing some of its profits, and that will enable us to relaunch the It's More Fun brand globally. Okay. The Tourism Secretary also will be commissioning a market research firm to evaluate the effectiveness of the brand. This will be tested in some 10 selected destinations. the result of which would enable us to tweak the campaign and make it more effective. We are also expanding and diversifying our products. During the previous year, 70% of travelers that visit our country enjoy beach resort holidays. We now want to diversify this by offering additional opportunities. Please take note that private sector has introduced new convention and exhibition facilities in our midst. You have SMX, the arena, the new convention center in Davao, and a new international convention center currently being built in Iloilo. Leisure and tourism, the first locator in Entertainment City, will open, that's Soler Hotel, next month. Okay, to be followed every succeeding year by the rest of the locators. Cruise and nautical tourism is being pursued quite aggressively. We have just invited 2 cruise companies to visit our shores. We're being helped by Singapore on this, who wants to build their country as a regional hub, but servicing the Philippines. Okay. Diving and marine sports obviously is being expanded. This will now include activities such as surfing and yachting. Next, please. In terms of upgrading skills, we recently were given a grant, a $6 million grant by the Asian Development Bank. And 2 consultants now are here preparing and conducting a training needs analysis, the results of which will be to offer various training programs, not only to the private sector, but equally, if not more important, to our local government units. While we have the framework for a national tourism development plan, we continue to lack the formulation and development of local and provincial plans, which has to be integrated to the overall picture. Therefore, a certain amount of this grant will be used to enhance the capability of selected LGUs in formulating these local plans. Next, please. Okay, we have successfully concluded and gone to bed with the Department of Public Works and Highways. For next year, they have set aside $12 billion of their budget to improve access between airports to the service center or the urban area and to attractions within a radius of 60 kilometers. Okay. This will continue every year to culminate in 2016 with some 17 billion pesos being allotted. Okay, so in terms of targets, it is still quite ambitious. We're not letting go of the 10 million overseas arrival mark for year-end 2016. And we have ramped up our projections for domestic travelers to 56 million. Okay. The bottom line really is, next please, not really counting tourists, but translating their activities into economic programs that can benefit the countryside. The rallying call is to generate this number of domestic and foreign tourists to how much we can distribute to provinces in terms of additional economic activities, and the most important one would be employment generation. Should these targets be met, If you look at the column of year 2016, that means to say that the tourism and transport, I underscore the transport component, okay, will be able to provide 7.4 million jobs. Okay, so it's not tourism only, tourism and transport. The share in terms of employment opportunities to the overall national share of jobs will rise to 18%. Okay, so on that note, again, we'd like to thank everyone to listening to us, and we wish everyone good luck in being able to achieve all these goals. Marami pong salamat.
How I wish our conference was in some white beach like that. But nevertheless, I hope this conference is turning out to be more fun, as it is always more fun in the Philippines. Thank you, USEC, Danielle Corpus, for that presentation. Indeed, an ambitious goal, 10 million visitor arrivals in 2016. And in order to achieve that goal, we all know very well that travelers will have to experience what our next speaker talks about, which is seamless travel experience. I mean, it's a very competitive global travel environment and travel industry. And without providing visitors or travelers this seamless experience, you really lose out. So our next speaker will talk about two buzzwords, connectivity and integration, and how I suppose Clark can emulate this kind of model and hopefully lead the pack in terms of attracting tourists in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Narzalina Lim. She is the president of Asia Pacific Projects Incorporated, a tourism and hospitality consulting company based in the Philippines, which specializes in tourism, strategic planning, marketing representation, training, and feasibility study preparation. Her company has prepared tourism plans and strategies for the Philippines, the latest one being our very own National Tourism Development Plan of the Philippines. It has also completed tourism planning and infrastructure design projects in China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and several other Southeast Asian countries. But most notably, our next speaker served also as Secretary of Tourism under President Corazon Aquino and under President Fidel Ramos. Before her appointment as Secretary, she was Undersecretary for Policy, Planning, and Development of the DOT. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all please welcome Nars Lim.
Thank you, Dave. Is this working? Can you hear me at the back? All right. I'd rather stay in the middle so you listen to me and not fall asleep. Because if I stay behind there, there's a barrier between you and me. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers, the Clark International Airport and GGLC, the Global Gateway Logistics City, especially Jeff and Chichos, for inviting me here. Every time I come to Clark, I'm always amazed at the developments. And while we may be impatient with the slowness of certain developments, there is something happening. And as Dave said, it will happen. When? Well, I guess we just have to work together to make that happen, and I will tackle some of these issues in my short presentation. I won't talk so long because I think that it's more important that we get the inputs from the audience during the panel discussion, as well as from the private sector representatives who are here, who will sit at the panel. So my topic is seamless travel, and Dave already said two key words, connectivity and integration. Okay, so what is seamless travel? Seamless travel should be viewed from the eyes of the customer. What is convenient for the customer and not for the supplier of the service? It means connectivity. as already mentioned. Now, it begins when the tourist or the traveler starts to search for information about the destination that he or she is going to visit. And where does the travel get this from? Several sources, of course, from the internet. And these days, it's all handheld. Travel agents, they're still around in spite of the fact that the internet is taking some of its services away from them. Guidebooks, collateral materials, magazines, newspapers. It's always a source of frustration for me when I go abroad and I go into the travel agent's office and there's hardly any brochure or collateral material on the Philippines. You even find Vietnam and Cambodia there, but the Philippines hardly ever. Now, with the increase in budget that was mentioned by USEC Corpus for promotions and marketing, I hope that this lack of information can be addressed. Now, in terms of websites and information on the internet, there are a lot. But perhaps where we are lacking would be the completeness of the information. So the question is information about the destination and its attractions, facilities, and services easily available, and is it complete? We are competing with so many other destinations in the world that if the information is not complete, and it's not readily accessible, then people will go elsewhere. It's a no-brainer. So the questions often asked by the traveler would be, how do I get to my hotel from the airport? And I think yesterday there were some comments about the difficulty of getting from Clark International Airport to the different hotels. It would be by metered taxi. Do you have it in Clark? Rent a car, regular shuttle buses between airport and hotels. I tried to go to the Clark International Airport website, and when it came to transportation, the information was a bit fuzzy. So I think that maybe that is an area that we have to concentrate on. Are the transportation rates clearly indicated in the information? Are they regularly updated? How does the traveler know that he is not being exploited by the taxi driver or the transport provider? There should be transparency on the rates, and there should not be discrepancy in the rates being offered on the internet and when you arrive at the airport. There's nothing more than that leaves a bad taste in the mouth than when a traveler feels that he is not being treated fairly, especially when he's tired and is arriving at 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. How do I get to other destinations from the airport or from my hotel? Rent a car, shuttle buses to a bus depot, connecting flights, and other modes of transportation. Does surface transportation coincide with arrival of flights? So if I arrive at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Interesting point about integrated resorts. Obviously, this is really where people are going to these days, whether it's a Kotai Strip or Sentosa Island in Singapore. The integrated resort concept is something that is definitely successful. I'm just curious why you don't think Clark is an integrated resort, considering it has many of the components you'd find in most IRs. They have hotels, even an airport, which other IRs don't have. I mean, that should be a real significant contribution. We have hotels, you have casinos, you have like the hot air balloon, you have these big annual events. Why isn't it a legitimate integrated resort?
Well, the question is, why don't I consider Clark Freeport as an integrated resort? Well, because for the simple reason that the perception is that it's an export zone. The locators are mostly here for manufacturing, which they export out. And so there is that mixed perception. Is it an export zone or is it a tourism zone? And this is the same challenge of Subic. When you approach Subic, what you see are factories, and while there's natural beauty around, it is being eclipsed by the image of factories.
Should that be corrected? I mean, just your opinion.
Well, I think with very ingenious landscaping, I think that can be corrected. But I don't think there's any planning going on in Subic that way. So an integrated resort has the look and the feel of a resort, which is relaxing. In Clark, you come to do business. Okay, so I think that that's why I in my presentation I said there is an opportunity to really master plan integrated resorts in the Crow Valley area.
But not in the existing.
I think here there's no more land available. Okay. Now, you asked earlier, your first question, Dave, was what's a good thing that's happening in Clark Freeport? I have to distinguish between Clark Freeport and Central Luzon because there's more out there than just Clark Freeport. Okay. Now, in Clark Freeport, I think the greatest thing that's happening is GGLC. And I'm not saying that because they are co-organizing this event or because Dennis and Jeff are my friends. Because GGLC has Medical City. And the opportunity there is for medical tourism. I think that with direct flights from a lot of places to go to Medical City for medical tourism, there will be hotels nearby and serviced apartments. I think that's part of the plan. There is a big opportunity to develop this product. I think USEC Corpus showed that as one, wellness, retirement, medical tourism together. That's one product, I think, that Clark Freeport can offer. That is still tourism. And as mentioned, conference meetings because of the business market. Now, if you go further afield to Bataan and Zambales, where there are beautiful beaches, then you can combine that with business tourism and medical tourism, and that makes one package.
All right. Thank you so much, Nars. The floor is open for your questions, your inputs, your suggestions. We have quite a number of microphones actually on the floor. We should make it very convenient for you who are either in the back or the front. Yes, Jeff, you want to throw the first question? Go ahead. Just some ground rules to make it easier. We don't have much time. Please direct your question at any particular speaker so that we don't have to ask everyone to respond to your question.
The question I had was somewhat of a comment first, and then kind of just directed towards the Travel Agents Association groups. The talk about what is there to do in Clark. I'm a pretty avid traveler, especially around Asia. And I would say this area has just as much to offer as many of the other places. It's not Bali, it's not Phuket, it's not these areas that, have the beaches or the world-class kind of beauty. But that's really not the draw here. I mean, I think, first and foremost, work to your strengths. And in that sense, what Nars mentioned with medical tourism, with Medical City being here, is a huge potential boon for the area. The MICE industry is growing here. So that's an amazing asset to have, and increased hotel rooms and conventions that are continuing to happen here. And especially with Manila's congestion, more and more people are saying, yeah, we'd love to get up to Clark to hold our corporate event. But in terms of what's to do, who knows? I mean, there's a wide variety of lists, but I think it's the promotion and packaging which is the most important thing, which is the hardest thing. I've been here for 3.5 years and I see none of it, or very little of it. And from a person who comes from the U.S. who's used to just clicking online and seeing everything at your fingertips and finding out who to talk to, how to get there, like a Lonely Planet type guide, that's very difficult. That's one of the hardest things for the Philippines, I'd say, in overall tourism, but certainly in this area as well. How do you get to Subic? How do you get to 100 Islands? How do you get to Pinatubo? Who are you going to use for your tour operator? I've done probably 90% of the tourism things in Central Luzon.
On your own?
On my own, just personally, because it's interesting. I like doing that where I live. But it's always so difficult. The only way you find out about it is if you yourself have done it and then experience it and then do it better the next time, or you talk to a friend who's done it. It's very difficult to find out in advance or plan in advance how to go about doing your trip or your desired event. And then one of the most frustrating things is constantly you hear about, oh, did you know this group just had a concert here last weekend? Or did you hear about this cultural tour or this food tour? And you're like, oh man, I wish I had. I would have definitely gone. So it's, even though I know groups promote it extensively, for whatever reason it's not, I guess there's no network. And maybe that's the question is, what can these travel associations do, working with the government sector or private sector groups, to create a network maybe to get this information out? Because that's where I think the disconnect is. People have this misconception there's nothing to do here, and there's amazing amounts of things to do here. It's just not known, I guess.
Thanks, Jeff. Carmen, maybe you'd like to... Eileen, you're holding the microphone, but let's have Eileen first. Actually, quite a complex analysis there, but basically asking, why is it that so little is known about all the great things happening here?
Number one, I share your frustration. I don't think it's just around Clark that's happening. But let's go back a bit of history where the marketing funds of DOT did not belong to DOT. That's why the Tourism Act is there to provide funds, immediate funds, to the Department of Tourism. That's one. Where the PAGCOR, there's a percentage of the PAGCOR proceeds that goes there. Secondly, the lack of information, who should address it? I think that's the disconnect there. Who is supposed to provide it? Because there would be pointing fingers, whether it's the CVB, the Greater Clark Visitors Bureau, or is it the DOT, or where should the funds come from, or is it the private sector? And usually, the CVB or a tourism council would put that effort together because you are all the stakeholders. If you want something to happen, you really should cooperate with each other. And that's the only way. And as you say, government sometimes moves more, slowly. So, if you want to move something faster, then you have to take the initiative. That's the only solution.
Nars, I'd like to bring you in because looking at the slides of the Undersecretary, you didn't really see Clark there, no? Among the priorities. In fact, it was Boracay, there was Palawan. Is that a historical reality for the DOT? And second, bring in the Hunter Valley experience to back up what Eileen was saying about private sector taking the initiative rather than waiting for different government agencies to take the lead.
Well, I think the DOT is prioritizing leisure destinations like Boracay, Mactan, Bohol, and unfortunately, Central Luzon was not pinpointed there. But I think now with the growing number of visitors going through Clark International Airport, the DOT should take notice of that and put Central Luzon in the priority area. The example I gave of Hunter Valley tourism is a private-public sector partnership, but with private sector taking the lead. And I'd like to support what Eileen said. It should be the private tourism stakeholders that should manage a website that has all the information that is timely with all the concerts and all the how to get there and all the issues that Jeff raised. I think there is something happening in the connectivity area, but not information is being released out there through a website or through a blog or through Twitter. There are so many media that's available for this, and it's just, I think, getting organized and getting it done. I think that if the stakeholders feel that there is something in it for them in terms of income generation, they will do it.
Thank you. Microphones are available. Please take the mic if you have a question. Also, please identify yourselves for the benefit of our panel.
Good morning. I'm Bob Wagner from the Robert T. Wagner Foundation. For the Kapapangans here, Maya Paabak Keko Yunang. I did the best I could. My girlfriend is a chef and a master baker, and she's Kapapangan. And the food here is some of the best in the Philippines. Could be challenged by Bacolod to a certain extent. And I'm in Bacolod quite a bit, and I know a lot of people who move back and forth between this area and Bacolod. Unfortunately, we don't have any direct commercial flights, so I have to fly myself sometimes in a small aircraft. But that's neither here nor there. I want to know, there was somebody, I was sitting in the back, and someone there mentioned something about the food, about promoting the food in this area. I traveled to Europe a lot, and I lived in Europe for a long time, and there are certain cities are known for certain things in Europe. And one of the cities in Europe that's known for food is Lyon in France. Okay? You don't go to Lyon to play golf. You don't go to Lyon to go for the nightlife. You don't go to Lyon for anything other than to just enjoy the incredible food. And the food here is really, really good. Now, a couple of months ago, we were at the Kelly Theater, a bunch of us. And we were talking about the new Taste of Pampanga that was scheduled for this coming December. I don't know if any of you were there or not. But they had a huge spread of all the different Kapampangan food types. And it was really, really incredible. And even my girlfriend said, I've never even known that any of these people were here, and they're going to be exhibiting at Pamangan, which is the name of the food festival. So I think if you really wanted to concentrate on identifying this area with a particular thing, forget about the golf and the nightlife and all of that. That's all ancillary. Focus on what people know how to do here really, really well, and that's the food.
Thank you. That's really more of a suggestion rather than a question, but feel free to react. Carmen and Cesar, yeah.
Actually, our association, or even the tourism sector, has already established the culinary programs in the Philippines. And we have already established one product for Pampanga, which is actually a combination of Culinaria Pampanga Bulacan, which runs for 8 hours. And this is actually a combination of a food demo, food tasting, showcasing the culinary cuisine of Pampanga, and of course the dessert of Bulacan. And on top of that, we have several culinary programs.
Is that in the website, or I mean, I guess the question is, if these things are existing, but people don't seem to know about these things.
Yeah, going back to that question, why there's a lack of promotion, I agree, and parallel to what Eileen has said, the private sector has to take the initiative. How many associations do you have here in Clark or in Pampanga? I'm sure there are a lot. Is there a tourism council here in Pampanga or in Clark? Because we cannot always depend on the national program of the Department of Tourism when it comes to marketing. One way or another, the private sector has to take a lead. For example, with PhilToa, since up to now, the Tourism Promotions Board, which is actually the attached agency of the Department of Tourism to take care of the marketing and promotions, has not really settled in. So we at PhilToa has already taken the initiative. And one way of doing this is really to have already an inventory of fun tour packages to complement the branding of It's More Fun in the Philippines. Well, let's face it, It's More Fun in the Philippines was really a big one. It was still a big one, but it could only be as good as that without any other component that would come to it. So since the TPB at this point has not really set any direction yet on what they want to do because of the lack of budget or trust, I really don't know why. So we at PhilToa has already taken the initiative to design all these tour packages that will complement the brand of It's More Fun in the Philippines. And this will be posted already in the website of PhilToa. So anybody who would like to see or check what can we do in the Philippines, they can see it there. So these fun tour packages is a very encompassing tour packages. As a matter of fact, for the interest of the people of Clark and Pampanga, we are featuring this Pampanga and Clark as a destination, as a day destination from Manila, as a part of a whole caravan or round trip, from Pampanga to Subic, to Pangasinan, and then to Baguio, Pampanga to Baguio, going down to Pangasinan, and then to Subic, back to Clark. And that is actually a 5-night, 6-day program. All of these will be featured, or this will be uploaded in the Philtowa website. But my point there is that you have to take the lead. You cannot just always wait for what the government will do. You are the privates, you are the stakeholders here. You have invested, you put in your capital. So you cannot just depend on what the government will do. You have to take the lead.
Carmen, I think you wanted to say something. Yes.
I agree with what Cesar said and what Eileen and Nar said. We need the private sector to invest in the tourism products. But what I'd like to say is that Cesar mentioned about the Tourism Council. We are in the process of creating one for Angeles. As for the GCVB, the Greater Clark Visitors Bureau, I'd like to say that it's a private organization under the umbrella of the North Philippines Visitors Bureau, which is the CSR of the Manila North Tollways Corporation. And that's how it was born. There are 11 other CVBs in the North Philippines area, including Subic. And there are, other than what Undersecretary Corpus said about, part of what he said earlier on the product portfolio, we have education here in the Angeles and Clark area. We have a lot of schools catering to foreigners, especially, for instance, the Angeles University Foundation. It has Indians studying medicine and nursing, business management. We have Chinese coming in the groups, enrolling every semester. They graduate here at the Angeles University Foundation. Now we have the Koreans who are learning English. So that's how a lot of English schools for the foreigners came to be.
Okay.
And we also have the retirement group. We have a lot of foreigners retiring here because of the, like anywhere else in the Philippines, the standard of living is a lot cheaper here in the Philippines than in their home countries. We have Americans. Previously, we only had the American military. Now we have the Australians. We have a lot of Commonwealth subjects retiring here.
Okay. Rosemary, you wanted to say something?
I just want to focus on the question of that guy there. You're talking about chef, right? You're talking about food and chef. Let me just focus and answer. Let me just give you an
Unfortunately,
answer on that
we're
question.
serving...
Yeah, okay.
We're serving food, but not Kapampangan food.
Just talking about food, because this is one of what Clark and Pampanga in general has to offer, okay? My daughter is a chef herself. And one thing I can share with you, let your girlfriend learn to cook the exotic food, where Angeles is known for, like the crickets. Because actually she herself has to, hold sessions for some potential chefs who wanted to really make a name here. And first thing they have, camaro. They call it camaro. So first thing they have to learn is to cook what is more exotic and known in this place, which is the camaro. All right, and of course the next will be sisig and all the other grills that they have around in the area. Because I want to focus on what your question alone is talking about food. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Yes. Please identify yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Hilda Padua. I'm the Managing Director of TISA Travel and the immediate past President of the ATAP, Alliance of Travel and Tour Agencies of Pampanga.
Thank you. Your question is for?
First, I would like to thank the gentleman over there for mentioning about Pamangan. He was there, and it was the initiative of the private sector, ATAP. So Pamangan, it was held last December 14, 2012. It was a foretaste of Pamangan, the unveiling. It was just actually a launching, because we're going to have Pamangan 2013 Kapampangan Food Expo, which will be held here in Clark again on September 13 and 14. My question actually is not related to that.
Okay.
But I just want to share that the private sectors here are very aggressive and very willing to really work with the government.
Congratulations, yes.
Okay, we've been mentioning since yesterday and today about the increasing number of airlines flying in and out of Clark. But we never actually tackled about these airlines' suspension of flights and cancellation of flights. Because there are issues that we need to address. I think the reason why they're canceling is because of recognizing that the travelers going out from Clark are the same travelers coming in. So I would like to say the example of Palawan. So AirAsia canceled the flights, and yesterday was the last flight of Air Philippines. Now that we have EK, Emirates, to fly effective October 1, my question is, what is the immediate plans? Because we've been hearing long-term plans. Immediate plans of the LGUs, local LGUs, tourism government agencies, private sectors in preparation for that flight.
Okay.
Are we seeing the Middle East market to visit Clark and other parts of the Philippines? Or we're seeing it again, that the reason why they're flying here to Clark is because of the 10 million Filipino residing outside the Philippines, which is just 10% of the population of the country. I think basically in other airlines also consider that. They fly in the north, in Clark, because of the fact that there is a big number of OFWs that reside in the north.
Okay.
So I'm not actually hearing that the potential of the Middle East market to visit the Philippines and the preparations.
Okay, so quite a number of questions there. One is about the inconsistency in the flight schedules. The other one about whether these foreign flights are actually bringing in tourists or just servicing our OFW market. But before that, let me just agree about the potential of food. Last weekend I live in the Alabang area, which is very far south. I came to Pampanga just to eat sisig. That's all. 4 hours on the road to eat sisig and another 3 hours back. But it was worth it. I mean, it was an experience that you don't get anywhere else. So you're on the right track. I think the potential is there. But going back to the challenge about the flights, anyone like to take that on? Eileen?
We cannot second guess what the airlines plan when they market their new routes to and from the Philippines. But I would say, as a Filipino, or as here in the Philippines, business tourists are growing, and this is not in any DOT plan. It is not in any DTI or whatever plans. Business tourists are growing. There are several. If you were here yesterday, they would have. You would already see that there are several Japanese companies investing in the Philippines. There are several ASEAN companies that are investing in the Philippines. There are several trade in the Philippines. And I think because the common carriers tax, the removal of the common carriers tax is going to be passed as a law, that there is savings also in making this as a future or a potential hub or destination. And hopefully that will, because the government is into connectivity, with the purpose of having connectivities and being a hub and so on, this can be their game plan, and I'm sure it is. You can read between the lines of what they strategically have plans for in coming here and why come to Clark. In fact, the 10 million tourist arrivals, in fact, Director Luciano said, kaya yan kahit sa Clark lang, if we move fast enough. So, again, I think that's the key word, if we move fast enough. So I think Philippines will really be off demand. Clark is poised to be first because everything is available right now. So I think that should answer or speculate the answer to your question.
Okay. Let's also not forget that Emirates coming from Dubai, Dubai being a hub for European travelers as well. It's not just the Middle East market.
I think it's from the experience of the previous flights, because I think what the lady is saying is that most of the flights coming in via Clark, I do not know the exact ratio, but I would say that about 70 to 80% would be OFWs. So with the coming in of EK now, with Emirates, they're looking at it also in the same perspective. But mind you, even in Manila, for example, because let's face it, the Philippines is an OFW country. Most of the international carriers, even Philippine Airlines, for example, when they try to consider a route, they would always try to consider what is the percentage of the Filipinos or OFW in the area. Because having the OFWs as a base market, that guarantees them something like already a viability of the route. Now, but given that, having said that, please don't take away the possibility that even if you have the OFWs are returning. They are now classified even now as tourists, because the balikbayan definition does not limit to the balikbayan coming from North America. I think the balikbayan definition now is like 2 years, 3 years. You are now considered as a balikbayan. And these people would have money, no? Now, even if you have only 20% of the real foreigners coming in via Clark or even via Manila, out of this 20% tourists, you may have here the business travelers, you may have here the leisure travelers, but the question really here is, what do you offer them? You should be ready, without really studying what will be the problem, you should always be ready on what to offer to these people, even if it's just 10% of the total traffic, no? But if you're not ready on what to offer, then you will be bypassed again, because from Clark, immediately they will just proceed to Manila, because the products in Manila are already more established. What I'm saying is that if you can really establish the products that you have to offer here in Clark, then even if you get that 20% or 15% of that real foreign traffic or tourists, then it's okay.
Nars, I'd like to ask you, Nars, in October, with the increasing flights from Emirates, that would include European travelers, Middle Eastern travelers, OFWs included. How prepared is Clark, in your opinion, to